I had only planned to tighten a few loose pipes. When my elderly neighbor, Claire, knocked on my front door that Saturday morning, she looked embarrassed more than worried. "I'm sorry to bother you," she said, twisting her house key between her fingers. "There's a leak in the basement, and the handyman cancelled again. I know you've fixed things around your place before." I shrugged on an old work jacket. "I'll take a look." Claire's home was one of those quiet places that seemed frozen in time. Family photographs lined every wall, the scent of cinnamon lingered in the air, and every piece of furniture had a story attached to it. She led me downstairs, where a slow drip echoed through the unfinished basement. The problem wasn't serious. A rusted clamp had loosened around an old copper pipe, letting water escape one drop at a time. I shut off the valve, replaced the clamp, and checked the surrounding fittings. "You really know what you're doing," Claire called from the top of the stairs. "I've learned by making expensive mistakes," I laughed. While testing the repair, I noticed shelves filled with carefully labeled boxes. Some contained Christmas decorations. Others held children's toys wrapped in clear plastic. One box simply read, "For someday." Curiosity tugged at me, but I looked away. Everyone deserved their privacy. Claire returned carrying 2 mugs of coffee. "You've probably earned a break." I accepted the mug, sitting on an old wooden stool while she leaned against a workbench. For a few quiet moments, we listened to the silence only broken by the humming furnace. Then she looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." She hesitated so long I wondered if she'd changed her mind. "When people disappear from your life," she began softly, "how do you know when it's time to stop waiting for them?" The question caught me completely off guard. I wasn't expecting plumbing to turn into philosophy. I stared into my coffee before answering. "I don't think there's a perfect moment." She nodded but said nothing. I continued. "I think you stop waiting when hope starts keeping you from living instead of helping you survive." Claire's eyes filled with tears almost instantly. She walked over to one of the storage shelves and carefully pulled down the box labeled "For Someday." Inside were neatly folded baby blankets, tiny shoes, children's books that had never been opened, a stuffed rabbit still wearing its price tag. "My daughter was pregnant," she whispered. I stayed silent. 8 years ago she left after an argument. Claire's voice cracked. She said she needed space. I was stubborn. She was stubborn. We both expected the other to call first. She gently touched one of the blankets. Then her phone stopped working. She swallowed hard. I learned she'd moved across the country. "So you lost contact." I knew the city. I knew she was alive. But every birthday I convinced myself she'd come home. Every Christmas I wrapped one more gift for a grandchild I'd never met. She smiled sadly. "I've kept buying presents." The shelves suddenly made sense. Every unopened toy. Every carefully folded blanket. Every hope packed away for someday. I thought if I stopped preparing. She whispered, it meant I'd stopped loving them. The basement suddenly felt much smaller. I thought about all the things people carry that no one ever sees. Not boxes. Not blankets. Invisible weight. Invisible grief. I looked at Claire. "You never stopped loving them." She looked up. "But maybe loving someone also means letting yourself keep living while you hope." A long silence settled between us. Finally she laughed through her tears. "You know, I asked you to fix a pipe. And somehow we ended up trying to fix a broken heart." She smiled. "I think the heart is harder." We both laughed quietly. Then she surprised me again. "If you were me, what would you do?" I thought carefully. I'd write one letter. One. Not to explain everything. Not to argue about the past. What would it say? "I'm here. I love you. My door has never been locked." Claire closed her eyes. "That's all. Sometimes people need to know there's still a bridge before they'll cross it." She wiped away another tear. For the next hour we sat together at her old workbench writing that letter. She crossed out sentences filled with regret, removed paragraphs full of blame, deleted explanations that no longer mattered. Eventually only a few simple lines remained. They were honest, gentle, hopeful. When she finished, she folded the paper with trembling hands. I don't know if she'll answer. You can't control that. I know. But at least she'll know where home still is. Claire slipped the letter into an envelope. As we climbed the basement stairs, sunlight poured through the kitchen windows. Everything looked exactly the same. Yet somehow the whole house felt lighter. At the front door she thanked me again. For fixing the leak. I smiled. I think that was the easy part. She laughed warmly. And thank you for answering the question. A week later I found a handwritten note tucked beneath my front door. It read, "She called." Nothing else. Just those 2 words. But they carried 8 years of waiting. 8 years of forgiveness. 8 years of hope refusing to die. Sometimes the greatest repairs aren't made with wrenches, screws, or new pipes. Sometimes they begin when one ordinary question is finally brave enough to be asked, and someone chooses to answer with kindness instead of certainty.